there, ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we diving into today?
Well, today's deep dive takes us south. Oh, virtually speaking, of course.
Yeah.
We're looking at a blog post, and get this, the website is called The Southern Elephant.
Okay, so I'm guessing we're looking at conservatism today.
You got it. We're tackling the core ideals of conservatism, and our guide is a fellow who calls himself Big Earl. He's got this whole folksy charm thing going on.
I like it already. It's always refreshing when we can make these kinds of topics relatable. Sometimes, let's face it, political theory can be a little dry.
Tell me about it.
So, what's Big Earl's take on the foundations of conservatism?
Well, he gets right to it. He lays out three big ones: faith, family, and freedom.
Those are pretty universal, though, right? I mean, you see those pop up across the political spectrum. So, what makes them distinctly conservative?
That's where Big Earl doesn't disappoint. He doesn't just throw these ideas out there. He connects them to real-world policy. Like with faith, he links that straight to freedom of worship. He's saying the government should never interfere with how you practice your beliefs.
Interesting. So it's about how those values play out in the public square. It's one thing to say family is important. It's another to say, and because of that, we need X, Y, and Z policies.
Exactly. And he does that with family, too. He calls it, get this, the cornerstone of society. And naturally, that leads him to strongly support things like parental rights and education. He sees government involvement there as overreach into family life.
So he's giving us a kind of blueprint here, like, these are my core values, and this is how I see them shaping the way society should function.
And he's not afraid to use some colorful language to get his point across. He actually uses the phrase nanny state when he's talking about government overreach.
Oh, I know that one implies the government's trying to micromanage your life, hold your hand every step of the way.
Exactly. And that leads right into another core principle for Big Earl: limited government. Decisions, he argues, should be made at the most local level possible. He even uses the term subsidiarity.
Yes, subsidiarity. It's that idea that things should be handled by the smallest, least centralized, competent authority.
Right. So instead of a big, far-off federal agency calling the shots, your town council, for example, might be better equipped to decide what works best for your community.
Makes sense. After all, they're closer to the people and the issues at hand.
And you know what? This idea of localized control, it actually ties into Big Earl's next point: free markets.
Of course. It's all connected.
He is all about minimal government intervention in the economy. He even calls the free market, and I quote, the engine of prosperity.
Classic. I bet he's a pick-yourself-up-by-your-bootstraps kind of guy, too.
You know Big Earl.
Oh.
He does not disappoint. Individual initiative, self-reliance, those are big for him. But he also makes a distinction that I found interesting. He says it's about a hand up, not a hand out.
Okay, so there's nuance there. It's not about being opposed to helping those in need, but more about the approach, right?
Exactly. Like, he's drawing a line between providing temporary assistance and, as he sees it, creating a culture of dependency on government programs. He wants people to be empowered to become self-sufficient.
Gotcha. So it's less about the what of helping people and more about the how and ultimately preserving individual dignity.
And get this, he connects this whole idea of personal responsibility to something that might seem unrelated at first glance: national defense. He is a firm believer in a strong national defense to protect the homeland. He does not mince words on that topic.
Right, because for Big Earl and for a lot of conservatives, national security is about more than just military might. It's about projecting strength on the world stage, deterring aggression, and ultimately protecting the freedoms and values they hold dear.
It's like he's saying strength, both individually and as a nation, they kind of go together.
Right, like a strong nation needs strong citizens, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Okay, so Big Earl doesn't stop there. He goes on to mention a bunch of other issues that conservatives care about: traditional values, education, economic opportunity, you name it.
It's a lot. It's interesting, though, how he kind of brings those back to those core principles we were talking about.
Right. It's like, what's the common thread here? It's like the connect the dots thing we talked about.
Exactly. Okay, so take traditional values. It's a term you hear a lot, but Big Earl seems to be getting at something specific. Honoring our heritage, passing down values to future generations like honesty and hard work, that kind of thing. It's about keeping those traditions alive because they make for a strong society.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, being stuck in the past. It's about recognizing that some values are timeless.
Yeah. And when he gets to education, you see something similar. He's really big on parental and local control, school choice, charter schools, homeschooling, that kind of thing.
Again, it's about giving power back to individuals and families, Let them make those decisions.
And of course, not everyone agrees with that, right? Some people would say that a more centralized system is more fair, make sure everyone has access to the same quality of education.
Totally. We have to remember these are complex issues, and there are strong arguments on every side.
Right, and that's what we try to do here. Not tell you what to think, but help you understand the why behind the different sides.
Exactly. Okay, we could spend all day on every single issue, but for everyone's sake, let's at least touch on a few more that Big Earl brings up. Healthcare, immigration, and the environment.
Yeah, and these are big ones, where
Wow.
even within conservatives, you're going to have a range of opinions.
Absolutely. So let's see where Big Earl lands. Okay, with healthcare, he seems to take the same free market approach that he brings to economics in general.
Hmm.
Choice, affordability, less government involvement.
Right. Let people make their own decisions about their healthcare, encourage competition to keep costs down.
Okay. Now, immigration. That's a tough one. Where does Big Earl stand on that?
Oh, well, he's definitely big on law and order. He really emphasizes securing the borders and making sure immigration happens legally.
Which is a common perspective from conservatives. I wonder, though, does he address the whole idea of America being a nation of immigrants?
He does. He acknowledges that history,
Yeah.
even while calling for stricter policies.
Huh. Interesting. So there's that tension there,
Exactly. It's
Uh,
complicated, right?
for sure. Okay, last but not least, the environment. Does he fall into that, industry over everything kind of stereotype?
Actually, he calls his position conservative conservation, which is kind of interesting. He talks about the need to balance protecting the environment with allowing for economic growth.
Finding that middle ground, I guess.
Right. It's not that he's against protecting the environment. It's more about finding a way to do it responsibly without harming the economy.
Gotcha. And with that, we come to the end of Big Earl's post.
Yeah.
But, and this is key, he didn't just leave us hanging. He ends with a call to action.
He does. What's he want folks to do?
Oh, I like that. A call to action, but not in a everybody go storm the Capitol kind of way.
No, nothing like that.
More like let's actually talk to each other, huh? Even when we disagree.
It's refreshing. You don't see a lot of that these days.
No, you really don't. So what I'm taking away from Big Earl's post, and really this whole deep dive, is that we don't always have to agree to have a good conversation.
Exactly. And honestly, sometimes the most productive conversations come from those different viewpoints, those moments where you're like, huh, I never thought of it that way.
Totally.
Hmm.
He gave us a lot to think about. That whole faith, family, freedom thing, those core values, limited government, personal responsibility, and then how those play out in the real world.
Yeah, like healthcare, immigration, the environment, big topics, and Big Earl's got something to say about all of them.
And I mean, we just scratched the surface here. But it's like he drew this really clear line between his values and the policies he supports,
Mhm.
which I thought was interesting. Like, here's the why behind the what.
Right. And that's important for all of us to keep in mind, I think. Like, regardless of where you stand on the issues, understanding the other side, where they're coming from, it's crucial if we're ever going to actually talk to each other and not just at each other.
Couldn't agree more. So to wrap things up, Big Earl, thanks for the Southern hospitality, thanks for the sweet tea and the food for thought, and most importantly, thanks for reminding us that it's okay to disagree as long as we keep talking to each other.
And on that note, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive for today. We'll catch you next time.
Keep those minds open out there.